As a running coach, one of the biggest problems we have is athletes with injuries. Obviously, it happens to us all. In fact, there's a funny story around. There was a research study once done that asked the population of runners who had experienced a running injury in the last 12 months, of which 75% of people said yes. They went on to say the other 25% of people were lying. It's fair to say, as runners and as coaches, it is a big problem, and they are always going to happen. It's our job to try and minimize that risk of injuries. But in this video, I want to explain a little bit more around specifically calf problems. It's been a big problem for me personally for a long, long time, but it is one of the most common issues that I deal with as a coach with the runners that I work with. Quite often it's hard to unpick what is actually wrong with the athlete, whether that's an injury, whether it's a calf tear, strain, something that's being caused with muscular damage, whether it's shin splints, which is a common one, and whether that's damage then to the bone, which is causing things like stress responses or stress fractures, or whether it's something neural and the problem is presenting in the calf, but the issue is actually further up that chain and maybe stemming from somewhere like the back or the sciatic nerve. Recently, I had an issue where I thought it was a neural issue and it was presenting as a neural issue. And what I mean by that was I was getting some sensation in the calf, which felt a little bit more like cramping. But further up the chain, particularly through the hamstring and the glute, I was getting quite a neural sensation, sometimes even like a pins and needles type sensation, which often refers to that neural pathway being a little bit irritated, even sometimes a little bit jammed up and is gripping to certain muscles down that chain. That's certainly the message I've had from physios in the past, and when I've done some release work with them, it's tended to free it off and then problem solved. However, in this particular instance and more recently, my calves have been giving me a lot of problems, so much so that I was feeling like I was losing power in them. I didn't have confidence in them anymore. And every time I was going out for a run, I was worried that they might feel like they might pop. In races, I was holding back. I didn't have the confidence to put the force through them, and it was really impacting my performance. So what have I done about it? Well, what I decided to do was go and see a friend, Dave Orton at Orton Physiotherapy. He said, come across, mate, we'll have a look at things and, particularly have a look at the strength in that area. I also work with a physio here in Loughborough, Harvey, who's part of my training group and is a really good friend, somebody I coach and somebody I value and I get regular treatment from. So from a treatment side of things, I felt like I was on top of things. But when I went over to see Dave, he was able to use this clever bit of machinery that he's got, this physiotherapy tool, which he's recently invested in. He said he's been getting some really good results with. So we had a look at my calf strength. And the way we did that was in a seated position, as I am now. And I was putting some force through the machine that Dave was using, and we were able to measure that peak force and also that mean force that was being pushed through the tool that Dave was using to assess that calf strength. What that showed was really interesting. It showed that my calf strength was ridiculously bad. And this is in relation to what it's been previously, and also in relation where it should be compared to the level of athlete that I am, where I compete at. And what I mean by that is, as a runner, we should have good calf strength because we're putting a lot of demand on our calves and particularly the soleus. What this test was showing is that I was probably 3 times under the expected amount that Dave would be looking for to be pushed out on that force meter. So what does that mean for me? Well, it means that I've got to put in place a bit of a rehab plan. It means that I've got to go back to my calf loading. And it means I've got to try and get the calf stronger because I believe this is contributing towards the issue. Now, what I'm not saying is that everybody's calf problems are going to be due to strength problems. But ask yourself this honest question. If you are getting calf problems regularly, are you doing enough strength work to make sure your calves can deal with the demands that you are putting on them? And I can honestly say the majority of the people I work with who've had calf issues in the past, the answer is probably no. We do get a certain element of conditioning from the work that we do. But the biggest change to my training has been the elevation that I've added in there because I'm doing a lot more running on trails, which means there's a lot more demand being placed on my calves. However, the conditioning is not reflective of the work that I'm putting in on the specific terrain. So it means I need to get back in the gym, I need to get them stronger, and I need to make sure I'm strengthening them so they can deal with the demands of the trails and the mountains. How do I do that? Well, the first thing that I need to consider as a coach, and if you're an athlete who's adding something into your program, if you're going to add something in which is going to increase the demand on those muscles in that area, you probably need to drop something out or certainly reduce the loading elsewhere. So for me, that's meant decreasing the intensity of certain training sessions that I'm doing, decreasing the load of those training sessions while I add that volume in the gym and increase the loading within the gym. That's seated soleus raising, they're my biggest focus. I'm also adding in standing single leg calf raises in there. And I'm also adding in some more specific work where I look at barefoot conditioning, things like tiptoe walks, heel walks, some active plants, where it's more of a dynamic movement that looks at more active calf strengthening, a little bit more specific. So I'm giving it quite a few hits multiple times a week. At the moment, I've added those in 2 to 3 times a week, which means I've had to reduce the intensity of some of my running sessions. I don't want to overload in the wrong way. Yes, I want to overload for strength to get those muscular adaptations, but I want to make sure that I don't do too much. Eventually, when they become stronger and they're adapting to that work, I might reduce some of that work down and I might then add the intensity back in. And then I'll get that nice specific strengthening from the running that I'm doing, and hopefully from things like the hills and a lot of treadmill work that I'm doing currently in my plan. So if you're a runner who's experiencing calf problems, it might be time to think about strengthening work within your plan, certainly seeing a physio and getting a really good diagnosis on what's going on. And in fact, I would put that as priority number 1. Find out what's going on, and then you can come up with a plan of action. For me, that's been going to the physios, getting treatment, getting a diagnosis, having a look at what's working, having a look at what's not working, and then coming up with that plan of action that is going to enable you to run more economically, to give you the confidence in your running, and also help you perform better. So let's identify that one final time in steps. If you've got issues with your calves or any other running related injury, step 1, go and see somebody who knows what they're talking about. Once you've been to see them, make sure that you know what is going on and you come up with a plan of action. And when you've got that plan of action, be prepared to adapt and adjust your running program to put that work into your plan. Don't just expect to be able to do everything that you've already been doing and add this extra volume into. I hope you found that helpful. I hope you found that useful. I'm glad to say that I'm now back on my feet. I've got confidence in my calves again and my running is going really well. Hopefully that will continue. But what I don't want to happen is to drop that strength work out of my plan and fall back into that vicious cycle of run, rehab, drop the rehab, injury, back to rehab, run, and just keep going around in that cycle. So please don't make that mistake yourself. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you found it useful, and check in with you all again very, very soon.